Why you gotta see me? You get on my nerves. Whatever, dang. This is not conscious community connections, is it? I thought this was a discussion. And yes, we are live and we gotta say this stuff while you're whatever.
Yeah, we're just waiting for people to come on. So I guess cause you're muted, TYgar, and I can't hear you.
I hear no echo now. So
Okay.
not there we go again. So it's just I'm gonna cut off my mic so you can talk.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, we're just gonna wait for a couple more people to come in. Just wait a few minutes. What's that book? The Color of Law? Okay. Somebody's asking where's Frog? Who's that?
That's Kee-Kee.
Oh, that's Kee-Kee. Why he got 1,000,001 nicknames? He's at work. He's at work. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started because it's about 8:02 now. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name's Alicia. I am working with Conscious Community Connections, and we're going to do a discussion on racism and how it is assisted in the development of our society and how it affects our behavior. So, when I'm talking about this, I want you guys to keep in mind that this is a very racially charged topic. So, with whatever comments or whatever questions that you have, please be respectful as possible. Please consider that there are other people that are going to be listening to this. That being said, when I'm talking and doing the slides, go ahead and feel free to ask questions and comment in the chat, or TYgar and Heather. You guys can interject when you want to, and I will answer those questions, respond to those comments as I go along. Also, if you want to add any of your personal experiences, that'd be good too. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen, so hold on. Okay, so guys, I want you to realize that this is a very transparent and honest conversation. So, like I said, this is about just understanding racism, and everything that I have or that I'm sharing with you is something that I have collected over just like my years in college and my own personal experiences, but also it's just a collection of information from people that I've had conversations with during this time in the country. So I guess, the reason why we're talking about this is because I believe that we don't really all quite understand racism. I know some of you might be saying, I understand racism because I have to navigate it every day of my life. And then others, you might say, I understand racism because I have people of color in my family and I have people of color in my friend group. But the thing is when you're in a country where racism is so embedded into the framework, it's normalized. It becomes part of our culture. Therefore, we can't really recognize it because we move through it every day. It's a normal thing. It's almost like we have like our worldview. It shapes our worldview. Like we have a lens of something, like we're looking through a lens, and it is very tainted with racism. It's just how we were born. Like I said, it's a part of our culture. So I think that we all have to do our best in understanding racism, but in order to do that, we really have to explore it through education. If you think about it, it's almost like we've kind of been brainwashed by racism, right? Like it's been ingrained into us psychologically, where white people will think that they're superior and people of color will think that they're inferior. And it's not like I think that white people wake up every day and think that, they're white and great. Well, there are some white people that actually probably think that way, but I think the majority of the white people that I know don't think that. Instead, I think it's more like an unconscious racism that kind of reflects out in their behavior, how they kind of treat others and how they are treated in the world. And I think, though, on the flip side, that people of color, actually racism is more at the forefront of their consciousness. And I think it's because white people generally don't have to white people really generally don't have to think about race on a regular basis, because, well, every time there's conversations of race, we're not talking about white people. We're talking about people of color and how racism affects them. But that being said, I see a lot of this inferiority coming with, or it happens a lot, I think, in like the workforce. It's kind of projected, I believe, in like in internalized racism. So that's one of those things that we'll talk about later on, like another discussion later on in August. We'll talk a little bit more about internalized racism, but that's just kind of how I see it. And like I said, the only way that we can kind of move through this and get through this is through education and discussion, like what we're doing now. We want to talk about racism. We want to understand it more completely because it is a complex system. It's a complex thing, and it's very structured. And what holds up that structure is white supremacy, white superiority, and white privilege. And for us to understand it completely, we have to understand those things so that we can dismantle it. And I mean, I'm guessing that everybody is, where I'm at, where we are desiring social change. And in order to have social change, you have to dismantle racism. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. I can't see people's chats or add people into the conversation. So because the PowerPoint is up. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide, and I will answer all your questions and comments after I'm done with this, or if you guys want to have a conversation in the chat with each other, that would be fine too. So, well, how did we get here? How did we get to the point in July 2020, we're here, where racism is one of the hot topics, right? Like everybody's talking about it. Well, how did we get to this point? Actually, truthfully, racism has always been in existence. It's been thriving. It's like a part of our culture. So it's always going to be a topic, right? We have a pandemic going on. We legitimately have a virus that's killing people, but racism still finds a way to make an appearance, right? Right here with COVID-19, racism is here, okay? We had Trump call it the Chinese flu. We had people attacking Chinese people verbally and physically. Next thing you know, we had the CDC come out and say Black people are the most likely to get infected, right? Then you heard about, and I'm not sure if this is true, but you definitely heard this, that Black people were getting misdiagnosed, that was leading to deaths. They're getting inadequate medical care, where the doctors were choosing who to use the ventilators on, And like I said, I don't necessarily know how true that is or how much of that is rumor, but that's not the point. The point is that it was such a racially charged theme that was infiltrated into the existence of this virus and how this virus was affecting us, right? I mean, we weren't even necessarily talking about health, we were making it racist. It's just, phenomenal how racism is always like there. And that's because it is part of our culture. It is embedded into the framework. And that is when we talk more about structural racism, we'll talk about how it became part of that. So to add to that, Black men who were wearing masks in stores and PPE were being targeted and being accused of being a threat in the store. And all they were trying to do was protect themselves. It's phenomenal how we constantly make stuff racist. And I'm telling you, it's because, well, that's what our culture is based on. So when that was happening, Ahmaud Arbery was shot, gunned down while he was jogging. And I really think that was such a devastating thing that happened. And I know it really upset the Black culture, right? The Black community. I know it really upset the Black community. But I don't think the Black community got the type of acknowledgement that they wanted from the white community, right? The white population. I don't think that the white population were necessarily listening, or maybe they were and they were just being quiet about how devastating that was. I mean, that man literally got gunned down for no reason. And I don't even think he got his justice. I don't even think he did. But things started changing when George Floyd was murdered. It was like all the psychological stress came to a breaking point. And you saw this happening with the riots, right? And the riots were really almost like the riots were like a creation of the paradigm shift, okay, in our behavior. And when Black people, when George Floyd happened, I really think that's when Black people were sick and tired, and whatever repressed feelings that they had definitely came to the surface, and they started rioting. They wanted a wake-up call. They wanted a white response from the white population, right? They wanted a particular type of response from the white population. And I think it was the wake-up call that particular white people definitely needed, okay? And that wake-up call happened when the riots occurred. And here in Champaign, it particularly happened when people started looting Old Navy, okay, and threatening to go into white neighborhoods. Now, that's something to talk about and think about, because there wasn't a white response here in Champaign, really. There was a little one, but not the big one. The big one came after white people's security and safety were threatened. That's when they started seeing that it was a necessity for change. Okay, that's important, because that's a paradigm shift. Okay, that created a paradigm shift. So there is a reason for all our behavior. All right, that's behavioralism 101. I think Jean Piaget said that. I'm not sure. Look that up. So there's a reason for all the behavior. Behavior is a symptom for something else that's more serious. Where you're dealing with a client or a person that has a mental health issue, their behavior might seem a little erratic. Well, it's probably because they have a mental health problem going on. So that's how you got to look at this whole situation. Our behavior is being affected by racism because racism is a part of our culture, and it affects us more than what people think. So moving on to the next slide. This is the 4 stages of change. So this is an actual therapeutic model that is used with people with addictions. This model helps therapists kind of understand where their client is at in the process of change and how to help them. Well, it's how they can assist them in those throughout those stages. So how can they help develop the paradigm shift to change? So if I didn't say in the future, or if I didn't say in the beginning, I want to say right now, I am a therapist, and I've been working in the field of social work for about 15 years. So I'm very familiar with this model. And right now I'm going to say, let's take this model and let's put it to our own selves, and let's see how we have changed according to our problem in this society, which is racism. So let's take ourselves and see if we can go through this model. And also, while we're doing that, we can look at the country as a whole and see how the country's been going through this model. So I'm going to help you go through it. So the first step is the pre-contemplation stage. So during this stage, you really don't recognize that there's a problem. It's a lot of denial going on. So let's say if people were born, say people were born in like the 1950s, right? Like late 1940s, 1950s, and they were alive during the civil rights. They might say today that, and I've actually heard people say this recently, that racism doesn't exist because it was abolished. It was abolished in the 60s during the civil rights movement. I've actually heard people say, well, I don't have to really worry about racism because it's not my problem because I'm not racist. That is a form of denial. You are denying its existence. You don't care to see that it exists. And now you're denying the fact that it affects your life. If racism is a part of our culture, it definitely affects you. Okay? I don't care what race you are, it affects you. I think at this stage, this is where people of color are definitely repressing their emotions. All right? This is getting up in the morning, going to work, knowing that your coworkers are completely ignorant and say ignorant, racist remarks, and not being able to stick up for yourself because you don't want the environment to be awkward. Or so you kind of maybe justify or rationalize their reasons for saying things. Oh, they don't know. They're just ignorant. Yeah, but see, that's another form of denial as well. And avoidance. So on a national level, this looks like, well, we can go all the way back to history, really, since the very foundation of this country, when the white people first started to enslave Black and brown people. Well, they justified it or rationalized it with religion and science and tried to say, it's perfectly okay to do this to people. Because look here, it says in the Bible. Look here what a science says. So that rationalization was trying to eliminate the fact that what they were doing was wrong. And we all know it was wrong, but that was an ingenious way to brainwash a society of people because it worked for centuries. It worked. So that, again, that's another example of how racism is embedded into the very foundation of this country. Okay? So just let that sink in. All right. So I know this is a lot of information, so bear with me. Second stage, contemplation stage. This is when you know there is a problem. This is when the paradigm shift is created. It hits. Oh my gosh. They're about to come to our neighborhoods and shoot up our neighborhood. There goes Old Navy. Oh my God, they're burning down Starbucks. What are we going to do? That's the realization that something's wrong and something needs to happen, right? You might also experience white guilt at this stage where you feel guilty because you've known this has been a problem and you've seen people be racist to your African-American coworkers on the job, but you didn't speak up and you should have. So you get some kind of guilt going on here. And I think that this is something that's happening across the country. This is nationally wide. I think a lot of white people are noticing, like, hey, people of color are getting serious, right? Or realizing that you should have done something and you didn't, right? And I think this is where people of color started feeling the surge of emotions coming back up. You know, they're no longer repressing it. It's coming all the way back up now to the point where you had a riot. So, third step is the action stage. I know this is a lot of information, y'all, so I appreciate you hanging in there. So, this is the action stage. The action stage. This is where you know you have a problem. So if you're here, if you're listening to this, you are definitely at the action stage. All right. People are at this stage all over the country. Okay, they're creating grassroots. They are doing. They're doing protests, right? They're talking and standing up to their family and to their friends. Some people are talking out in their coworkers, right? They're creating those uncomfortable conversations. All right, real uncomfortable conversations are being created. But you know, you're getting educated, you're having discussion, you're ready to create the change. You know, you could be deciding to vote. So whatever change that you make will continue on with whoever you put in office. So that's the action stage. Now, also during this stage, you'll probably experience some loneliness because you've isolated yourself from some people by standing up to them. So, you know, that's normal if people feel lonely. I would say at the contemplation stage, people could get a little depressed from you know, the realization of stuff. I would say that. Also at the action stage, that is when white silence ends. That's when people are quiet, are no longer being quiet. So moving on to the maintenance stage. Now this is where you got those people in office. They're supporting you. They're giving money and funding to your organizations. Everything's going, you know, great. You know, you got your change going, right? As a person, you know, maybe you felt lonely in the action stage, but now you have found a group of people that are like-minded and you're with them, and you and them are educating each other and fighting for each other, fighting with each other for this desired change, and you're protesting and what have you, right? So that's great. But here's the thing, relapse, that can happen, and that can happen at any stage. And when it happens, it can be pretty devastating and disappointing, okay? So what that would look like would be if you fail to put the right people in office, the wrong people in office could come in and just wipe it all out. We're not supporting those laws and that policy. We're not giving those programs funding. We're going to go to court and we're going to overrule any policies that are put in place that are supporting that cause. That's a relapse. Or it could look like this. I feel really lonely, and I isolated myself from all these people. I stood up at work, and now things are awkward. So I'm never going to say anything ever again. I'm going to go back. I just want to be friends with my friends. I want to be close to my family again, and I want the awkwardness to end. So that's what that looked like. It could also look like this. There is some thought that there are particular white people that might be thinking or might be jumping on board the protest bandwagon. We are in quarantine. People get bored. Yeah, I'm going to say it. People get bored. And there is thought and concern that there are going to be a lot of white people that fall off this bandwagon once they become, you know, on board, like they go back to work or whatever. If they jump off, then that is a relapse. So I just want to throw that out there because that is a thought. But to localize the relapse, make it look more to make it pertain to a local institution here, I'm going to say this relapse happened with the Champaign Unit 4 School District. So this is history of the Unit 4 School District, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, don't like to bring it up, but it is our history. It happened. We cannot cover it up. If we cover it up, it'll happen again. And that's not what we want to do, because once we do that, it'll be a relapse. We already relapsed in this, though. So several years ago, there was a court order. Illinois State Board of Education court ordered the Unit 4 School District to decrease the achievement gap and to eliminate racial discrepancies. So they had this order in place. They were doing very well. They were making progress. So they did things like they had school of choice. They also had they restructured the district so that people who were living in higher income neighborhoods can contribute their property taxes to the lower income or to the schools in the lower income neighborhoods, so that it would kind of so it would give a chance to children that were going to those schools and the schools in the lower income neighborhoods more money so they can get like more up-to-date tools, better technology, better books, stuff like that. They also did busing from the lower income, from one side of the town to another side of the town. So the children living on a lower income neighborhood could get bused over to the neighborhoods with higher income so that they could go to those schools. So they did do some things to try to eliminate some of these racial discrepancies. Well, we relapsed because the consent decree ended. And when that ended, we went backwards. And you heard about people of color and their families and their children complaining about how they were being treated, how the school administration was treating them. Then you heard about the increase in suspension rates with children of color in comparison to white children. So why did we relapse? Well, we didn't keep it going. We didn't keep it going because us as a community didn't fill out the surveys. They handed out surveys to the homes. Those surveys were the data collection tools that they needed. They needed the surveys to be filled out so that they could take that data and give it to the court and say, look, this still needs to continue. We didn't fill that out for whatever reason, whether it was people felt hopeless or people just didn't understand what the survey was for. But because that didn't happen, we relapsed. Okay, that's our history. We relapsed here. However, there was a recent conversation that happened with the school board. The school board did recognize that racism was a public health concern. So we went from maintenance to relapse back to the contemplation stage. So now we're here at the contemplation stage again with the Unit 4 School District. So good job, Unit 4. Maybe they'll put in some steps to create an action. I don't know if they have yet. So I'm going to stop the PowerPoint at this point. I'm going to open it up to a discussion. I'm sorry. I thought that I was going to be able to answer questions as I go along. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it now, and we can do a discussion. So we have any questions on what was said or any comments at all? No?
I haven't seen any comments. Well, any questions, I should say. Only
Okay.
comments.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know with the I mean the stages of change.
Mm-hmm.
That applies to a lot of different things. How can people recognize that they're going back through that cycle again?
Well, I think the best way to recognize that is, well, I think once you get to the contemplation stage, you can stay in that stage for a really long time. You can know that there's a time for a change and you should be making a change and actually not make the steps to change, right? So, I mean, that's kind of why I explain these steps so that everybody can kind of know what they're doing and how they're going through it. I think once you relapse, you know when you relapse. It's like I said, this is a model used for people struggling with addiction. You An addict knows when they relapse, right? They also know when they're in the contemplation stage and they're thinking about it. They also know when they're making action, like going to rehab. It's the same type of thing. It's just, it's the same model. It's just in a different situation. So,
Okay. Okay. Oh, we got somebody on here. We can't. I can hear somebody, but I can't see anybody.
hello? Uh, can we mute your mic if you're not going to talk? Okay. Eddie said he thinks everything was really well put. Well, thank you, Eddie. Thank you very much. So I'm glad I was able to break it down so that everybody understands it. Um, like I said, this is really just about understanding ourselves. If we're trying to make a social change here, we're gonna have to understand our own selves and how we move through this. Because even though we're a group, a community moving together, we're individuals in a community. And if we can't understand ourselves, we can't understand our community. You know. So
You might have to mute them. I don't know who that
there
is.
we go. I got it muted. Yeah, I got it
And if
muted.
you want to, I mean, you can take them off of there if you need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, is there any other questions?
I didn't see any that popped up on the comments.
All right. Any comments? Anybody want to give their experiences if they notice that they have gone through these stages before?
I know I have. Woo! Don't get there. It ain't about me, right? It ain't. This ain't even about me.
No, but it is though. Let it out. Let it in. Say
Yeah.
it.
Um. I remember going over this back doing like my undergrad studies and studying behavior changes and modifications and models. So I know for a fact that a lot of people go through these stages, and the most the most hardest or the hardest thing to do is just keep that denial,
Right.
and try to hold on to that denial like, no, I'm not in relapse, or no, this is not the same thing, when actually it is, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I think that I can use this model in many different instances with my own behavior in my own life. Yeah, for sure. But as far as when it, having to deal with racism, I got all types of stories to talk about that. You know, like finding out that my white friends were only friends to me just because I performed my blackness for their amusement. That's what Eddie said. Okay, exactly. Yeah, right. Finding out like that could probably be like the contemplation stage when you're finding out that you're like the token black guy. Is that what you're meaning? Um, yeah, that's big time. Yeah, you know, it. You know what is that and that is like a shocker within itself. Like, oh my gosh, how many times did I hear some of my friends say to me like, well, I'm not racist because I'm friends with you. I'm not racist because I got Alicia. Alicia, I'm friends with you. Yeah, yeah. He says it was a very jarring thing to confront. Yeah, yeah. So it's like a shocker, right? The reality check, the paradigm shift. Like, whoa, you know, do they really like me or not? You know, yeah. I mean, my some of the stories my daughter has going to school, and some of the things that she comes home telling me, it's unbelievable. She had a kid in one of her classes that she saw was cool. You know, they always talked, whatever. He was, just one of those. You go to class and you have that, two or three people that you talk to. And then one day after class, he comes up to her and he says, "So we're friends, right?" And she's like, "I guess. We talk every day in school." Or in class, and he said, "So can I call or can I use the N-word now since we're friends?" And she was like, "Get away from me." And she like walked away. She like told him to get away from her, like walked away and doesn't talk and would never talk to that kid ever again. But it's that right there, just like, geez, wake up call to reality of the type of racism, how racism is in this culture, right? How it is in our society, that you can't get away from it. It's everywhere. Even in the middle of a pandemic, people are dying from a virus, and we're still racist, y'all. I'm just saying, though. I'm just saying. Oh, that's my mom. Hi, Mom. She just walked
Hi,
away.
hi, hi. I ran off. I'm trying to get Aunt Ruth on here. I have to give her an
Oh,
email.
I think I saw it. That was Ruth E.
No, I don't think she's on here yet. I'm trying to get her on. I don't know
Oh,
your
okay.
email, so I'm trying to forward it to her.
Okay.
She's
All
trying to.
right.
I'll be back.
Okay, Mom.
I'll be back.
All right. I'm going to mute her. I'm going to mute her. So, but yeah, so that's just kind of like you know where I'm at with that, and hopefully people can agree. Yeah, Eddie says, "Yep, profiling black people for wearing masks like we're all told to." Yeah, yeah, that's another thing. Like I said, can you believe that? Like
Uh, so I want to, just talk a little bit about things. I'm sorry, my mic is just echoing, but in Champaign Urbana, we had a lot of people put into that box or that category of being a looter, and doing different things during I guess the looting period of this pandemic, whatever it was. And they
Mm-hmm.
really got smashed for this looting, in which I believe that a lot of people were mad and frustrated about
Mm-hmm.
the racism that is in Champaign Urbana or the Champaign Urbana area.
Mm-hmm.
Being on campus, being in a predominantly black neighborhood for all
Mm-hmm.
these years, and finally seeing different races, come and walk through or run through my neighborhood is kind of like, it's not normal. All right. It's not
Yeah.
normal, but it's almost like you want to forget about the past and let's just work on the 2020 and not worry about all of the racist things that has happened in this town, in which you slam certain people for certain things, but you're not penalizing everyone for their looting ways, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
their looting period. And that's just frustrating. I'm glad we're talking about the racism though right now. I'm glad we're
Mm-hmm.
able to discuss it and like broadcast it. And it's really giving people the opportunity that, hey, any and everybody could set a live up and talk about these things. Any and everybody can actually do a StreamYard and really talk about these problems that we have in small cities rather than big cities. You know, because it's like we need to really have these uncomfortable conversations. We really do.
Yeah, we do need to have them, you know. And like you said, I do appreciate you bringing up about the history point. Like, we can't just deal with 2020 just yet unless we really know exactly where all this is coming from. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if people really understand how racist this society is. And how can you correct something if you don't even know what it is? And you have to know the history, which is the origins of it, so that you can understand how it grew and how we got to where we're at. You know, how do we get to the point where people started rioting and looting? How do we get there? You know, well, you know, people were, you know, doing all this back in the 60s, and here we are doing it again. I mean, shouldn't we be saying to ourselves, like, why is history constantly repeating itself? Because we haven't figured out the origin of it. And how can you do that when you're in the middle of something? We're living in a society. It's so normal to us. It's so entirely normal to have racism around us. So it's like, how can you?
Is that a TYgar question? You just
Yeah, go ahead, Tiger.
I'm back
you've been in
in.
the background.
I know I've been heated out. I've been in the background. I got an echo here, but I'm thinking, man. Well, I always refer back to Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, and she covered the 8 areas. And well, I'm gonna just deal with education, policies, well, politics and policies right now. So if you look at the start of this country, before capitalism, it was called mercantilism. Mercantilism, right? Capitalism got its start from slavery, which was called a peculiar industry. So the whole start of the country was based on that. Um, so I don't know how you could get around that. The you know, and everybody talk about like the Boston Tea Party. You know that all of that was like a revolution. But what was going on at that time was England had got rid of their slaves, right? And they couldn't compete with free labor. So America at that time, you got to know history. America at that time had some of the most powerful men, in the world who were in the South. And a lot of people say, the North got um, made a lot of money off that as well. So don't just beat up on the South. America got over on that. Free labor,
Mm-hmm.
right? You were the product that was built on. It was built on that of creating classes. So all these isms are connected.
Mm-hmm.
Racism, sexism, ageism, they all connected.
Right.
It's 20 different levels in our society, or 20 different type of I say titles you can have. So once you understand how these things are embedded, then there's no escaping it. I heard celebrities say things now, like I don't want to mention his name, but let's just say Lil Wayne. He was talking about he ain't never experienced this. What he was saying is he's never experienced independent or individual racism. But if he was living in the projects and his father was gone, he was experiencing economic racism due to policies where these areas were redlined and they couldn't get resources. So there's no one who ever been touched by this of color, right? That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't understand that. Now, if you are a person, Caucasian or white, and let's say you benefiting from this, and you say nothing from it, such as, yeah, you could go in there and get a loan to do this, then you are benefiting from it. So there's no, there, you either a racist or you either anti-racist. But there's really no middle ground. But if you don't say nothing, then you're not against it. You see what I'm saying? And that goes back to this book. It's a brother, Kendi X. Ibrahim. He wrote a book called Stamp from the Beginning. It's a real good book. I think you ought to read it because you got a lot of black people who are, but they don't know they are. For instance, here go a good example. You tell these young men, man, if you just act right and pull up your pants, they will accept you. Well, that's not true. W.B. Du Bois took this position early on. If we just do better, then they'll want you in. But no, now you competition.
Mm-hmm.
As we saw what happened in what's that what's the name of the place over there in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Black Wall Street. They had the best school system. They dollar stayed in a community for up to a year. The dollar bounced 136 times, but yet you became a threat. So it's not about that. It's a there is a actual competition here that we've been invited to, and we don't understand it. And it's designed that both sides don't understand, not just us. The ones who benefiting from it too don't get it, because you'll hear them say things like, well, they pull themselves up by the boots. Why can't you? Well, you never had a boot. You never had a boot or a shoe. So what you pulling yourself up by? A toenail? Now, now check this out. When they did the Reconstruction period, those slaves that came out of it actually did very well. Look up. It was the martial law. This one you're supposed to get the 40 acres and a mule. That was reversed. Once that was reversed, that put you back in another position. Then that brought on like Michelle Alexander, what she was talking about, the new Jim Crow. But
Mm-hmm.
now you got mass incarceration. So in our areas today, let's bring it up to today, you over police. Like in the town where we at, you only 12 to 13%, but you 70, 80% going to jail. Well, are you doing more crime? Well, how is that? That don't make sense. You're not doing more crime. The crime is about the same, because if you really was doing more crime, I think it'd be a shootout every day. But these are the things you're dealing with. So those are the policies or what we're dealing with. But it's sold to America as we're making you safe. So today, everybody's talking about defund the police. The police budget for areas like Chicago is almost 30%, right? Big budget.
Mm-hmm.
These are huge budgets, but they're no safer. You just over police. You get more time out. So what's really going on? You know, these are the discussions that we're gonna have to really look at these things. And just like when they was passing the three strike laws when they passed that, they got a lot of ministers at that time, a lot of black ministers to back that up. I remember that because they had them stand there and say, "Yeah, we want to." But what we got to start looking at is what is the after effect of once these policies are passed. See, it was a lot of policies that was passed under Clinton that we are now experiencing 20, 30 years later. It's a lot of policies that's being passed now that's going to affect 20 or 30 years later down a couple of generations.
Right.
We don't get that.
Yeah, so what you're describing is pretty much what structural and institutional racism is,
Hmm.
and how we have to like live within that, you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and these are the areas where this is the confine that we living in now. You know?
Yeah. You're right. And that is really
Hmm.
interesting when you bring up that the people that benefit from it, um, they don't even understand how it works. You know, they have no idea how this was put into place. That's what I was saying um, in my presentation, that it's like a form of brainwashing. We don't even know how it works. We don't even know what society we're really living in. It's just normal, everyday stuff. You know? Yeah. So, yeah, that's good.
I got a bad echo on my mic, but that's why I'm keeping it off. But go ahead.
No, no, I was just just agreeing with what you said. Yeah. So, for sure. So, I know that we're going to talk about structural and institutional as well as internal racism um, in the near future. You guys, I wanted to say this. I was talking, and during my presentation, I was saying a lot of like the terms white people, black people, and people of color. Just wanted to make a note of that. I was really talking about that in general, because I'm very aware that not all white people think that way. I'm not all black people or people of color think that way. This was just general terms. I just wanted to make sure. I just want to put a disclaimer out there because I didn't want people to think that I thought that this is where everybody's at. But
Oh, I need to read the disclaimer.
I didn't want to. I didn't want people to listen to it later and be like, think that I was just thinking all white people are a certain way or all people are
For
colored
sure.
a certain way. So
For sure. And even like TYgar said, we have it to the point where people will take offense to a lot of different things. And it's just like, if you're mature enough, you should be able to understand where I'm coming from, that I'm not really talking just about you. If the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, then it shouldn't affect you. But even with some of the mature people around town, they even have a tendency to be hurt by certain people's words, and it kills me how you could be. I'm gonna just throw it out there: a police officer or a lawyer, and just take offense at every single word that I have to say. I'm nobody, but I can hurt your feelings. Really? Yes, there's some truth to it. That's what it means.
that hurt your feelings so much where they feel like they can put their hands on you. Okay, police officers get their feelings hurt so much nowadays that they feel like they can put your hands on you and arrest you. Look, y'all need to stop with that. And maybe that could be a discussion for another day. I don't know. We can talk about it now if you want to. But seriously, if you getting butt hurt because somebody cusses you out, you gotta stop with it. Y'all need to get better with that self control. Come on, the rest of us, we gotta control ourselves. When somebody cusses us out, we can't turn around and put our hands on somebody. Come on. You're look. You're a police officer. You uphold the law. You are not the law. Okay, there's a difference. So don't think that you can just go around doing what you want to do. There should be accountability there for sure. For sure. I don't know if we want to talk about that now or we want to wait till later. It's up to y'all. I don't know.
Why are you so close to the camera, TYgar? I'm sorry. I don't know.
You said it. I was thinking. I was like, his forehead is.
I'm trying to read stuff here and at the same time hear. So I'm
Oh,
playing around with my camera.
okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I'm making faces at Heather.
Oh,
So I'm just messing with it. But no, but it's a real discussion what you're saying. I don't understand this echo. Yeah. So I'm gonna turn it down and see. I'm trying different things here. Is that better? Nope, I still hear echo.
I don't really hear it that bad.
I think
Okay. It's pretty
I think it's only on your end, Alicia, because we can hear it.
An echo on my end?
We can hear ourselves, and then we can hear like an echo.
Huh. Really?
That's on our end.
That's weird. I wonder if it's because I'm in my office right now. Maybe that's what it is.
I, I'm not sure, but it's a loop. But I got a question for you. Now, those four stages, go back over them again. How do they work?
The pre-contemplational stage,
Uh-huh.
that's when you pretty much you're in denial about a problem. You think that it doesn't,
Okay.
you're not recognizing it as a problem. Um, the contemplational stage is when you recognize that it is a problem, so you kind of have a reality check, an epiphany that starts kind of like a paradigm shift, and you're recognizing it as a problem, and you're thinking about ways that you can fix it, right?
Okay.
The action stage is when you're actually taking steps to fix the problem. The maintenance stage is when the problem has been fixed, but now you're just trying to maintain the change. And then there's a relapse that can occur, and that can occur at any stage, and that's pretty much when you just go backwards.
So, in your opinion, what would you say we are at now? Are we back in a relapse?
Well, I mean, I think that we are moving in and out of these stages simultaneously all the time. Because
Okay.
if you think about it, we're a huge group of people. We're talking about a nation. And in some
Right.
and so our stages of change really depend on how we move. So we might be moving real good on one topic, but not so good on another, you know?
Mm.
So I really think it's really like where we're moving. Now as far as racism though, I mean, I think we've moved in and out of these four stages like
Right.
for
Okay.
centuries, in and out of all of them. I think that we've relapsed like crazy. We've gone. I mean, I think we've relapsed so bad at so many times and went all the way back to the pre-contemplation stage, where we were in
Right.
denial and thought that it never even that no, it doesn't exist. But and we were in that stage like deep because these killings by the police have been happening. And
Yeah.
a few people were like, yo, this is happening, right? And that was
Yeah.
usually the black community saying, hello, it's happening. But even
Right.
people in the black community, I think, got tired of saying it. You know?
Well,
I mean, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. You know that it's there, but it's exhausting to constantly say this is happening. You know, we need.
let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another question. Do you think that because there's a lockdown and there's no distractions, they make these incidents more uh, um, have a harder effect on the public?
What do you mean?
Okay, usually there are several distractions going on at this time. There's baseball games, basketball games, all type of stuff going on. There's no activity. So now it seems that we are forced to watch this. Everybody is. And now
Right.
here's what I think was going on. I think that's scaring a lot of white folks because now they realize something that was going on sort of beneath them. There's a police state that's coming in, and it's not only against black, but it's against actually poor. It's not really, it's, well, I say, yeah, it is with black and brown. But at the same time, these groups are mostly subjugated because they're at the lower status economically. So we looking at something that's more classism almost than racism now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's scaring a lot of them, that you are moving into this whole sort of police state. We see in Chicago now they got federal troops, right?
Mm-hmm. Man.
And they got them in where else? Baltimore. Well, what other places? They got them in Portland. Now, there's a law that's on the books where you're not supposed to turn the troops on America. It's called posse comitatus, right? But that seems to be overridden now.
Hmm.
Now you got men out there, no patch, and they are U.S. servicemen, or are they? We don't know. But now they snatching people off the street. So that means your rights, or the rights that you thought you had, have been disintegrated. And that's what's scaring the other folks. I think that's what got the masses out there now. And they like, wait a minute, man. If they could do this to this man, they could do it to you.
See, and
And that's a wake up call.
I hear what you're saying. That is a big wake up call. But I don't think, listen, the way racism works and the way it got white people thinking that they're safe from all this, not all white people, but
Right.
some of them that move with that unconscious racism, and are still not recognizing their white privilege. I don't know if they recognize that this ain't just a black and brown thing anymore, or it's
Yeah,
not.
that's what I'm saying.
What'd you say?
Well, it
No, you're
never
right.
really
You're right. Go ahead.
was. On both ends, like TYgar said, it never really was. They didn't understand. We didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So it never really was that. It was the rich and the poor. And some people just didn't see that and didn't understand it. But once you start talking about certain issues and topics, it affects both or all races, But the elite, you start talking about them and talking about tapping into their money,
Mm-hmm.
everybody gotta go. It's almost like off with everyone's head, and it's not right. But we need to understand what this really is. This is structured, and history repeats itself because of the energy in this world. It repeats itself for a reason. It does. It does. And there's a wise young man that pointed me in the right direction about the every century something happens. Before that century ends, something happens. We're at that stage in that time right now, 2020. Every time you get the elite where they're so greedy that they start printing money, they start watering the money down and just hashing it out and printing it and hashing it out every single time to try to maybe lessen the blow of how their empire is gonna crash, but it's doomed.
Because it's human behavior. Because we do the same thing over again and over again and over again. Okay, and that's why this is predictable patterns of behavior throughout.
Yep.
We know
Yep.
exactly what's going to happen when it's going to happen because we're human and we make the same mistakes. So, yeah, I mean, I hear you on that. It never really was, about, it was more about the rich versus the poor. That's why when in the beginning they had the Italians and the Irish and the French come over, well, they weren't considered equal citizens either. It's that's the way it was. But however, still, the black and brown people have been the ones that has been disenfranchised and marginalized like throughout history and have not been allowed to, gain their rights or their citizen or what citizenship, like the Italians and the French and the Irish. We haven't been able to do that. We haven't been able to bounce back from all that devastation, and that's probably because of structural racism. Probably, it's meant to keep us down. We got the glass ceiling in our institutions. You can't move forward, or we'll only let a few up at the top, but not all ya. You can't have all y'all there.
Well, it's designed that way. It's designed that way that maybe 10% will get back, right? But 80 to 90% will be crushed. So let's go back. Let's see when the slaves were released, right? And they talk about Lincoln freedom. Well, these people get compensated for that. You know that, right? They get paid for that.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a fall down for them. It was a fall up. You and me will experience a fall down. Now, yeah, they got free, but then you freed them and they passed the martial law, but then they came right back and took the land. So that was a fall down again. If you can't get back up, that's been the repeat pattern here. It never leaves, it only restructures itself a different way. Like you got the right to go vote, or no, you got the right to go to any store and buy any item, right? But that's more like consumer rights. You got more consumer rights. Like, yeah, you could go in here and buy. It's illegal for them to discriminate against you. You got more consumer rights than you get actual, say, rights to access to resources where you can do certain things, make certain things happen. The resources are tight in your community.
Mm-hmm.
They're there now. They're there. They are resources there, but it's not organized. For instance, the one of the highest earning areas of the lottery was in this black area in Chicago. So it's resources there, but it's not concentrated or it's not focused right. The dollar right now in your community only lasts 6.5 hours. That's it. Now, now in the Jewish community, it's 20. What is it? Uh, what is it? 24, about 20, 22 days or something. It's not. If you can't circulate, you can't build up power. Money is power. It needs to circulate.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Black Wall Street, that example, and there was other communities too. Roseland, it was another one, and these communities were thriving. So a lot of people look at what happened with the civil rights as that forced us into competition that we wasn't ready for.
Mm-hmm.
Segregation was actually building up a lot more power, but you know that the movement King and them was moving to now was called the Poor People's Movement. It's the book, the last book he wrote. Where do we go from here? What is it? Chaos or community? So that book talk about what's the next stages, and the next stages was to get poor people together and get them to start organizing and collecting, doing collective bargaining and other things. This is why this man became. This is why this man was so dangerous. You know, because
Mm-hmm.
if they was able to succeed at something like that, that would have transformed the place.
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Yeah. Really is. Yeah. Well, does anybody else have anything to add?
I don't know. Well, the thing was, Alicia, did you tell everybody who you were?
Who am I?
Yep.
Who am I?
Did you tell everybody? Like introducing yourself in the beginning?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think I did introduce myself as, at some point in the presentation. I think I said
Okay.
that that I was. I don't know what you're talking about. Quit playing games with me. Just say it. I can't guess what you said.
No, I didn't know if you introduced yourself and, talked about where you work and then like
Oh,
that you part of conscious community connections and stuff now.
I thought I said that, but yes,
You
I am
probably
part.
did.
I'm part of
She
Conscious
said it.
Communications.
Okay.
She
Yeah,
said it.
Okay.
yeah,
She said it.
yeah. So.
And I'm not just sticking up for her. I'm not just. She said it. She did.
She's. Oh, hey, Tiger, I got a hat. Kiki gave me one of your hats.
Look
He
at
did.
that.
I wore it today. I did. Yep.
Good. I
Yep.
ain't got no
More,
hat.
more power to you.
I ain't get no hat.
Well, I don't know. Kiki got one for me, and then he,
Oh, that's what that is, huh,
yeah.
Tiger? Okay. Okay. We see what it is. All right. Yep.
He left. No,
It's something wrong with this camera. I can't. I don't know.
yeah,
It broke
okay.
up.
Don't you worry about it. Don't even
I'm
worry.
going through a tunnel. It's
No,
a tunnel.
this
I
is the
hear every
stuff
other
I have to
word.
go through. This is exactly what I have to go through.
Mm-mm.
Exactly.
Y'all still hear that echo?
Yes. Can you try this, Alicia? Can you try to mute yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it.
Hey, that was it. Hello? Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
So the echo is coming from her end.
Yeah.
So I think this is very interesting with Alicia, how she put that together, her presentation. I thought I wasn't gonna make it. You know, it's been a lot of stuff going on, but I'm glad I did because I learned something from that. And I think we, like she said, I think we go through stages one, two, three, then it drops, then it go back one, two, three, then four, then it collapse, then do it again. And I think as a whole, and King, he said that too. King said he said he might not make it to the mountaintop, but he said as a people we gonna get there. So I think he was really talking about I think he was really talking about us tired individuals moving together and keep forcing this thing until it gets right, you know. And I think we got to keep just striving. That's all. Everybody just keep striving, and just learn how and start understanding each other better and the struggles. Now that don't mean somebody should be having guilt about taking advantage of these things. We're not asking that. I don't think you should. I ain't gonna call nobody out or nothing silly like that. I think it's just understanding your struggle so that you can overcome it. That's key. Once you could identify the issue, then you can work on it. But if you can't identify the issue and claim it, your part of this issue, how you are committing to this, then there's no complaint about it. And there is a contribution on both sides, to a degree. But that's some things we got to figure out. Go ahead, Alicia. I'm gonna cut off my mic so I can hear you.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree about that. We really need to take in consideration of how each and every one of us are going through a change, right? We're all going through these stages of change, and we have to be considerate of the other person. We have to learn from each other, right? And work together. So, and in this discussion tonight, I think a lot of topics came up like that we probably want to discuss in the future. I know that we talked about discussing structural racism, institutional racism, and individual racism already. But maybe we need to, visit police brutality and talk about that And just, I don't know, maybe in the meantime we can maybe talk to some police officers and get their side of the story. I do think that this, the whole nation is kind of, I mean, well, not the whole nation. There are some people that are more pro police and anti protester, I guess. But I would like to know, like, there are some decent police out there. I would like to know their thoughts about, other police officers or their colleagues, like, reacting in such a violent way, or very they're emotionally reacting. Is it necessary to punch somebody in the stomach while you're arresting them and they're already on the ground in the first place? Is it necessary to arrest people just because they're cussing you out? Like,
And that's one thing right there, where if we defund the police or something like that, there should be some type of stipulation where they need to take mandatory leaves. They need to take mandatory vacations. They need to have mandatory psych evals. They need a lot of different aspects when you start talking about the public server, such as the police officer, because they see a lot of different things and they deal with a lot of different personalities, in which maybe we should also include that they are certified in like behavior problems. They need to be certified in a lot of different things, where you should have certain things in place when you are talking about the police. Reform will be perfect for the police. Not necessarily defunding the whole thing, but giving them the tools that they need so that they don't have to be called for every single problem in the world. They have a lot on their shoulders and they are human. They do mess up. But we're talking about a lot of different cops that are just corrupt out of this world. And they didn't start being corrupt. You know what I'm saying? They didn't come in there probably being that person. Most of them probably didn't. But there are some that probably did. But the ones that probably just were turned to be the worst is just like, oh, it's a slap on the wrist. I can smack somebody and I won't get in trouble. Certain things like that. And it's just so arrogant that, you have a lot of these men just or women. But when I say men, I'm talking about the men because we know men are more violent, I should say, than women. But a lot of the policemen and or women, they are okay with being violent. They're okay with being, verbally abused so that they can be abusive, so it's a toxic relationship every single day. And how do you keep that balance? How do you balance that stuff out in your mind, in your head, and in your heart? So there's a lot of things that police need to do, and us as a people, we need to help them, but we need something. We need something in place. We need a criteria.
So
We need people to understand certain things when it comes to the police brutality.
I got a question on that as far as doing that training. There was an experiment back here in the 60s, and they took college students. I can't remember the name of the experiment, but they took college students to a prison, and they had one set act as the guards, and they had the other set act as the inmates. By the time they got off into this experiment, the guard ones were very abusive. Now, these were college students, and they completely acted out the part. It got so far out of hand with that experiment that it scared a lot of them, because, and I think it go back to that thing that what absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's hard to it's hard to separate when you seeing the same people, but they're not your people. Let's say you have a different race, and you keep seeing that particular other group constantly, but you in that area, you in that area heavily. So you constantly seeing that group. You start to perceive that everybody in that group is there because it's not your group. Funny thing is, you have a hard time seeing your own group. Now, let's say if they was in an all white area, would that be the same? You know, no, but it's easy because we got lazy brains. Our brains are lazy. If I tell you right now, think of an apple tree, you would draw the same tree that all kids draw. That same little apple tree with the little apples hanging up, right? But no two apple trees are the same. So your brain don't see past that. And we sort of categorize things because one, we live these very different, we live these hard lives. Well, not hard, but they stressful lives. They demand it. So you don't have time to really see that, So viewing somebody just because they somebody different from you, it's very easy to go and say, well, that must be a criminal, and you treat them like a criminal. But when you treat somebody like a criminal, then something else happens. This person start acting like a criminal, right? Now, Alicia, I'm sure you know this because you deal with, you're social. You deal in the social science area. If I keep treating you like a criminal, eventually you start acting that way. So, I don't know if you can reform this. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I don't know. And then you can, like I have seen black
Maybe
cops in the
they
area coming up
maybe
in
they should only
Chicago.
serve 5 years or something. I don't know.
It got to be something, but I'm not sure if you could turn this around that way. And they keep saying, "Well, put more black cops in," but sometimes man, you'll get.
Well, you're
Tell you,
right.
man, I don't know.
So you're right. You're right. The Stanford prison project is what you're talking about, and you're absolutely right. What happened was when you put people in a position of power, and then you put people in a position of a role of submission, and that is a very interesting. They have a they I think they actually made a documentary of it, and if you can find it, you should watch it. It's very interesting because the people that had this that were considered the prison guards, the way they treated the people that were considered the prisoners, it was just completely abusive because they could. It was all because they could. And interestingly enough, there are some people who were prisoners that did everything that the prison guards told them to do because they were scared. Now this was an experimental project, so people could have left whenever they wanted to, but there were still people that decided not to leave. Um, that project was considered unethical because they let it go. They let it run way too long. They should have stopped it because it was getting real violent. But you are right though, when they say put more black police officers on the force. Well, that could help, but they're human, and when you give people a level of authority and power, they will abuse it because they can, because they're human. So if we want to fix this, you need to take away the amount of power that the police have. Like I said, police, they uphold the law. They are not the law. Okay? And I think a lot of police officers think that they are the law. That means what they say personally goes. So they can make up stuff along the way. That's what it seems like, right? Um, and I think that's the problem there, that that people think that they can make up things along the way. Oh, sorry. I think somebody came in. I'm trying to let them in. But anyway, um, so I think that's an issue. When also we need to have them hold themselves accountable. I don't know why they can't hold themselves accountable to the community. We are who they protect and serve. Hey, you need to hold yourself accountable to me. It's like on my job, right? I have to send out surveys to the agencies that I collaborate with to the clients that I work with. And then they tell me about whether or not I'm doing a good job or not. That's how I hold myself accountable. I don't understand why the police get away with not holding themselves accountable. I think that would really put a check and balance with things, and there's no check and balance. And I think with Heather, when you were talking about like they need some education in like behavioral psychology or understanding I don't know, disabilities, understanding mental health, right? But you're talking about sending people to school, actually going to college then to become a police officer, which I'm not opposed to, because I feel like if you get that type of education, then you'll become more aware. That's the type of education I had, right? So when they talk about, and I'm not opposed to that, but it's just then the police officers have to acquire more than just a high school education. They might have to meet at least 2 years of college or a 4-year college degree. And then that'll take a little bit longer for people to get on the force. However, it couldn't help. So when the police talk about they do 40 hours of crisis intervention, I'm looking at them like, true that. I got 15 years of crisis intervention, dude. So, I don't know how that could like equal out, because when I'm looking at the way that they handle crisis and the way that I handle crisis, I'm like, well, what crisis intervention model are y'all going by? Because I don't be having a gun when I calm a person down, and I calm people down that are pretty out of control, that are been off their meds for several weeks, that are doing some violent stuff, that are running. I've chased after my clients. I've ran miles after clients, that have been out of control. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, what's the difference? Why is this happening? Why are there knees on necks, guns, just to calm somebody down who has a psychotic break? How is that okay? How is it inhumane and unethical if I were to do it, but it's okay if a police officer does it? You know what I'm saying? Where's the check and balance there?
I've seen a couple of comments.
So Eddie says, I believe the problem is the structure of the system. Police barely get any training. Even the testing is minimal. Exactly. I do agree with that. And then he also says the police are ill prepared to do all the things they are asked to do. The easy out is pain compliance, and that's the bulk of their training. Yeah. I agree with that. So, Eddie, I guess you're implying then that, they just need more training, different type of training, restructure their, how they're trained, I guess. But then it's just like, it brings back to this, like, okay, even if they're like retrained, okay, what happened to the lack of compassion? Like, where did that come from? Did you like I think, Heather, you said that, people, they come into the force and some of them are already corrupt when they got there. It's like, could we do a better job at assessing that so we can suss out the people that don't have compassion? Can we do that? Can we do a better psychological assessment?
Yeah.
So we can get rid of the psychotic cops that are on the force,
Right.
Somebody said as well, where women, they live twice in one day. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but they live double the life in one day, basically. So they age, or they do whatever it is, double the time of other beings, meaning men, I should say. So I should say as well, police, they live maybe twice or 3 times as any other people as well, meaning they go through a lot of trauma, a lot more trauma. They see a lot more trauma, in which, how are you processing that? How are you filtering that out? How are you getting it out? How are you able to balance that in your life? It's not possible unless you take time off. Like, actually taking a sabbatical or whatever they call those things, like taking time off to like really get your life or self or brain back together, because they see traumatic things and we're all human. We can't see that all the time. But if you start talking crazy, thinking crazy, you're gonna act crazy. That's just how it is. We're
Yeah.
almost done. Well, we should be done. It's not.
Yeah, yep. So we're done. Our time has came to an end. It's a really good discussion. We're gonna be back here on August 7th at 8 o'clock. TYgar's putting out the book, The Color of the Law. That is that the reference book that we're yeah, TYgar? Is that just a book that you're referring to?
It's just a book I refer to. I think everybody should read this book.
Okay.
Talking about the policies.
I'm gonna write it down. The Color of the Law.
Yeah, it's by Richard Rothstein, and he outlined all the policies and how they affected each one of these communities, from even creating the suburbs, like how the suburbs were created.
Mm,
You need to read this book.
okay. So
How areas were redlined. Get this book. Yep.
the areas of red line. Okay. Eddie says it's on his list. So, yeah. So next time we'll come back at August 7th and we'll talk more about structural racism. So, hopefully, TYgar, maybe you can talk more about that book when we talk about it, because that sounds like that's exactly what that is. So, yeah, everybody tune in August 7th at 8 o'clock and bring your questions. All right. Thank you. Bye.